Welcome back to the Crypto Deep Dive, the only podcast where we wade through the blockchain swamp so you don't have to. I'm Laurie, your resident skeptic, and with me, as always, is Nick, our blockchain brainiac and professional chart whisperer. Nick, are you ready to explain why my portfolio looks like it's been through a blender this week?
Oh, absolutely, Laurie. I'm here to provide all the reassurance, or at least a healthy dose of sarcasm, as we dissect another week of crypto chaos.
Perfect. I'm sure our listeners are thrilled. So let's kick off. The markets took a nosedive this week. Bitcoin dropped, Ethereum stumbled, and altcoins, well, let's just say they didn't exactly cover themselves in glory. Nick, what on earth happened?
Yeah, it's been a real roller coaster. If the roller coaster was built by a committee of sleep-deprived engineers, Bitcoin dropped over 4%, Ethereum lost more than 7%, and altcoins like Dogecoin and Solana basically went on a diet, shedding double digits. The total market cap lost about 7.5% in just 24 hours. Panic selling, high trading volumes, and a nice little cocktail of fear and confusion.
So just another week in crypto then?
Pretty much. But what's interesting is that the fear and greed index is still sitting at 55 neutral territory. So despite the carnage, people aren't exactly running for the hills. Not yet, anyway.
Maybe they're just numb at this point, but Nick, what's actually driving this? Is it just the usual market jitters? Or is there something more sinister at play?
Well, there's always a bit of market psychology, but this week, politics decided to make a cameo. There was a public spat between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, which sent shockwaves through both crypto and equity markets. Bitcoin dipped below $102,000 briefly just because two billionaires had a disagreement. Welcome to 2025, where memes move markets.
I mean, nothing says sound investment like your net worth depending on a Twitter beef, but the market did bounce back a bit, right?
Yeah, it's stabilized. But it's a reminder that crypto is more sensitive to headlines than a reality TV contestant. And it's not just the drama, regulatory shifts are in play too. The SEC dropped lawsuits against Coinbase and Uniswap, which is a big deal. It signals a potentially softer regulatory approach, especially if Trump's administration continues.
So we're basically relying on politicians to be consistent and rational. That's reassuring.
Exactly. What could possibly go wrong?
Let's talk about the UK for a second. I heard the FCA might lift its ban on crypto ETNs for retail investors. Is this a game changer or just another headline?
It's potentially huge. If the FCA follows through, it opens the door for regular folks in the UK to access crypto ETNs, exchange traded notes, without jumping through hoops. It's another step toward mainstream adoption, at least in theory.
So more people can lose money faster. Progress.
That's one way to look at it. But seriously, it could bring more liquidity and legitimacy, which the market desperately needs after a week like this.
All right, let's pivot to something that actually sounds positive. Circle, the USDC issuer, had a blockbuster IPO, right?
Absolutely. Circle raised $1.05 billion in its New York Stock Exchange debut, and the stock shot up 168% above the IPO price. That's a strong vote of confidence from institutional investors, and it could open the floodgates for more crypto firms to go public. It's like the grown-ups are finally joining the party.
So what does that mean for the average crypto investor? Should we all be popping champagne, or is this just another flash in the pan?
It's definitely a milestone. More institutional money means more stability, at least in theory. It also means companies in the space are maturing, which could attract even more investment. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The market still has plenty of growing pains.
Speaking of growing pains, let's talk about Bitcoin's hash rate. It hit an all-time high this week. Why should anyone care?
Hash rate is basically the heartbeat of the Bitcoin network. When it's high, it means miners are confident, investing in more hardware, and betting on higher prices down the line. It's a sign of long-term faith in Bitcoin's value proposition, even if the price is wobbling in the short term.
So miners are bullish, but traders are, what, just confused?
Pretty much. The miners are playing chess, while the rest of us are stuck on checkers.
Let's not forget about the altcoins. They've been getting hammered. Any bright spots there, or is it just doom and gloom?
It's mostly doom and gloom, but there are a few exceptions. TRX and Hype managed to buck the trend, with Hype actually up 4% this week. Sui, a Layer 1 blockchain, rebounded after a DEX hack and is getting some attention because of a big token unlock coming up. But overall, it's still Bitcoin season. BTC is outperforming everything else.
So if you're holding altcoins, it's time to hold tighter, or just cry quietly into your keyboard?
I'd recommend a mix of both. Maybe add some ice cream.
All right, let's look ahead. What should listeners be watching for over the next week or so? Is there any hope for a rebound, or are we bracing for more pain?
It's a mixed bag. The market's in a transitional phase. With the fear and greed index neutral, we could see stabilization or more volatility if macroeconomic data or political headlines go sideways. June is historically a pivotal month, and there are a few key dates coming up that could move the needle, like economic data releases and Fed statements.
So we're basically at the mercy of central bankers and politicians. Again, wonderful.
Pretty much. And don't forget, the correlation between Bitcoin and the stock market is still high. If equities rally on good news, crypto could follow. If not, well, buckle up.
What about regulation? You mentioned the SEC and the FCA earlier. Are we heading into a golden age of regulatory clarity, or is it just more smoke and mirrors?
It's too early to call it a golden age, but the signs are encouraging. The SEC dropping lawsuits and the FCA considering lifting the ETN ban are both positive. If these trends continue, we could see more institutional and retail participation, which is good for the market's long-term health.
And what about the institutional side? Is the Circle IPO a one-off, or are we going to see a wave of crypto companies going public?
I think it's the start of a trend. The success of Circle's IPO shows there's real appetite for crypto exposure in traditional markets. Expect more firms to follow suit, especially if the regulatory environment keeps improving.
Let's talk predictions. I know you love sticking your neck out, Nick. Where do you see Bitcoin heading over the next month or two?
Analysts are eyeing some ambitious targets. If the bullish conditions persist, we could see Bitcoin pushing toward $115,000 to $125,000 by early July, and some are even calling for $150,000 to $200,000 by year end. And it's a big but, everything depends on macro factors and regulatory clarity.
So in summary, if everything goes right, we moon. If not, we crater?
That's the crypto way, Laurie.
Before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom for our listeners other than don't panic and don't take investment advice from podcasts?
Honestly, stay informed, keep an eye on the macro headlines, and don't get whiplash from the volatility. And maybe unplug from social media when Trump and Musk start another feud.
Solid advice. That's it for this week's Crypto Deep Dive. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, in crypto, the only constant is chaos. Nick, thanks for bringing your expertise and your sarcasm.
Always a pleasure, Laurie. See you on the next roller coaster.
Catch you next time, folks. Stay sane out there.